You fail to get more athletic because you're training the wrong things at the wrong time. Here's a simple 4-step process on how to actually train things in the right order. So phase number 1, right? Phase number 1 is build your health. So if you're not building your health, you're not going to be able to do the other 3 of these phases because they progressively get more intense on your body and your joints, right? So you want to be building your health by working on full ranges of motion, having very balanced training where, you start building strength, you're using weights, you have the proper mobility that you need in all of the joints for the specific sport that you're training for. And usually you want to have actually more than your sport needs so that you're training through ranges more than just what your sport needs, because that will lead to greater health over time and allow you to push things harder further down the line without worry. Working through these full ranges of motion also is going to improve your tendon strength, your joint health, and also you should be building a solid aerobic base, just meaning you should be doing some sort of cardio, whether it's playing a sport, going for some runs, or doing sprints. Like, there's lots of ways to do it, but you should have a base of this because it helps with your recovery and it helps with your work capacity, which again means you'll be able to do more to get better in further phases down the line, right? So if you're not healthy, get healthy. So with building your health, we're thinking about doing things like full range of motion lifting, progressive overload from, possibly even less than body weight to then, your ability to do heavier weights. We're usually thinking higher rep ranges here of like 6 to 12, sometimes even more than that. We'll be doing isometrics. We will be doing jumping and sprinting, but usually it's going to be on a gradient to not full effort, working up to full effort, depending on what issues you have. And then also just having full ranges of motion in your joints, pain-free, ideally, before we begin to work on the next phase. So once you're actually fully healthy and things are moving along, you can go into phase 2, which is going to be building your max strength. So the reason now that we go into building your max strength is it's the foundation for the other 2 phases that come after it. So building your max strength is just building your ability to produce force, your maximum ability to produce force. This is also going to do things like increase your muscle size, and it will continue to increase actually your health if you do it properly. And you'll be able to do things like increase your tendon stiffness, which will be needed further down the line as we go through the remaining phases, right? And so when you're building max strength, we're thinking of doing things like squatting with heavier loads, deadlifting heavy loads, bench pressing heavy loads, pull-ups, dips, all these weight room activities. These are the main ways we're going to build strength. And specifically doing lower rep ranges from 3 to 6 is really where strength is going to be built. And 3 to 1 is just going to be showing or expressing what actually is your maximum strength. So then once you've increased your max strength, now we move into the next phase, which is phase 3, which is build your power. So if max strength is just the most force that you could produce, right? Now power is how quickly can you produce as much force as possible. So this is going to end up being some percentage of, if you can produce 300 pounds of force, but you can produce 200 pounds of force super, super fast, that's power. You also want to be working on your power in things that are specific to your sport. So, all athletes basically should be sprinting and jumping because these things are needed for almost all sports and carry over to tons of different activities. If you have some specific thing that you need, such as a baseball player who needs to be able to throw, you will work in exercises that actually help with that. But the big general ways to work on your power are doing shorter sprints or hill sprints, doing Olympic lifting, and doing jumping. Phase 4, which is building our elasticity or our reactivity. This phase is basically just learning how to store and release energy with as little loss as possible. So there's a lot of technique involved in this. This is going to be maximizing the ability of your tendons to act like springs and just bounce out of positions quickly. So these will be like fast ground contact time type of activities. This would be like sustained sprints, like flies, or longer distance sprints, not just 15 to 20 meters, but we're talking like 60 to 100 sometimes. And being able to sustain explosiveness through, repeated jumps and things like this. So you're thinking plyometrics like bounds, hops, depth jumps, things like this. So once you go through this 4th phase, something key to understand just about these 4 phases is other than the first one, but even in that, none of these just happen in total isolation. It's all a blend together of, you're working on your health, but to work on your health, you need to get stronger, but to really use that strength properly and continue to get healthy, you'll be working on power, and you're still doing things that take reactivity and elasticity. Like, none of these things are fully isolated from each other, right? They all blend together, and over time, you begin focusing more on one and less on the others, and then more on one and less on the others. Although generally you always want to try to stay healthy, because if you're not healthy, you are going to limit your ability to output high forces and be able to fully put your intention into what you're doing, because you have pain or a consideration that you're going to get hurt. And if you have that, you're not going to push hard. And if you can't push hard, you will plateau sooner. But so this is why having an actual structured plan can be so important, to make sure that, one, you are healthy and you're ready for the demands of the training that you would need to do to actually get better as an athlete and just become more athletic. And then the other side is making sure that you never drop out all of these things and you actually are maintaining qualities as you move through different phases, right? If you look at all the popular jump training right now and just all training that really, really has worked for people long term, it always mixes all these things together. Like, you can get away with just hard focusing on one thing for a while and you'll improve as a beginner, but as you become more advanced, this does not work anymore. But basically, that's all I wanted to touch on this video. Keep it super simple. These are the things, some of the examples of how you can work on them. And if you're more interested in more things, you can go to my website, or you can hit me with a comment or shoot me a DM on Instagram, whatever you want to do. But for now, that's it. Talk to you guys later. Peace.